Welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we discuss real metaphysical and occult topics so you can manifest real and tangible results in your life. This week, we're going to be continuing our Mage Minded series with a topic, an area of discussion I have gotten a lot of questions about directly from my community, from my friends, from colleagues, and it has been a massive topic and philosophical discussion in how I manage to get through life with some of the views I have and how I do so without getting stressed out and worrying about everything, right? And that is justice. All right. We are going to be talking about justice here. So, first off, let's define the word justice because it gets thrown around a lot in the world. Okay. And if we really break it down, justice comes down to the quality of being righteous, um, rectified, um, impartial, fairness, the quality of being right or correct, sound reason, rightfulness, and validity. Okay. Now, those things are actually important. I do actually personally use a checklist with a lot of those things in my personal life when I'm presented with something and how I might arbitrate that, right? Now, I want to be clear when we say right or correct, okay? I think I have a note. We'll go into this more later, but being right is not like winning an argument and haha, I'm right. It's not an emotional right or anything like that. This is a factual right. There is a right that is right. Okay. It is clear cut. There's a correct way to do it, there's a wrong way to do it. This is not subjective when we're talking about justice. It's not a subjective concept when we're talking about right there. Okay. Um, and that in and of itself actually makes this a harder topic, right? All right. Now, you all know I don't do politics on this channel, so I'm going to try to avoid political debates when we talk about right and wrong and justice as I go through this. I'm going to try and keep it as general, middle of the road as I can. We are filming this live in front of our Working Dragon Mystic community. We will be doing a live Q&A after. If your questions, I will take the questions. I will answer them in the live Q&A as best I can. I will ask that we keep them non-political as much as possible, but some of the trickier questions I will still field and will still talk about them as long as it's kept respectful. Okay. And if you are interested in joining our live community, there will be links below, or you can find us at workingdragonmystic.com. There should be a link there that sends you to the live community. We do a lot of topics. We do lives there every week. If you wish to support the channel, it's also the best way to do it because you can sign up as a supporter for only $10 a month, get access to all our online courses. I do live lectures over there where you don't get to see them anywhere else. Supporters get live conversations with me weekly where they can literally ask me anything. All right. With that said, let's get into this topic a little bit. Now, like I said, I have a checklist, right? Many of you who follow this channel or know me from the community, you know I am kind of a justice driven person. It has shaped a large chunk of my life for many, many reasons. And because of that, there's people who come to me and they have questions like, wait, how do you rationalize supporting this with this? And right, I have a checklist. And anytime I don't know where I stand on something, like if you spend your time truly meditating on these concepts that we've talked about in this Mage Minded series, you're going to know yourself better. Absolutely. In fact, if you've been doing it since we've started, I guarantee you've found insights and enlightenment into yourself that you didn't know before. And we're not done yet. But inevitably, no matter what we meditate on, we're going to find something new that we need to figure out. And when it comes to, is this action justified? Is this justice or is this BS? I do kind of have a small checklist that I sit down and I ask myself questions and meditate on, right? First off, I must view the topic impartially, right? I sit down and I look at the topic and I ask, do I have an emotional opinion? Do I have a personal perspective on this? And that may seem weird because that says you're not impartial. But see, that's what I'm doing. I'm actually trying to find out if I'm impartial. Because if I have an emotional sway on this, if I have a personal gain from this, I want to make sure anything and everything I measure against does not include those. My emotions should not matter. My personal gain should not matter. If doing what is right costs me money, I will still do what is right. If doing what is right hurts my feelings in some way, I will still do what is right. That is the measurement I hold for myself. So I want to identify anything that I do have. So in any calculations, I leave them out entirely. They do not get to be included. Um, that's the only way to be as impartial as possible. The next thing I ask is fairness to the situation in full context on present events and past repeated actions of those involved, right? Fairness of the action, fairness of the decision, fairness of the situation, what is actually taking place, you know, in full context with the people involved, right? I ask myself that specifically because there are nuances, right? There are very big nuances in life that we need to take. And that's why I have that there. What are the nuances in that situation? The next one I have is what would be right or correct in this event or events, right? What is truly right? Like, what is the right course of action? I'm not talking lawfully right. I'm not talking spiritually right. I'm not talking agenda driven correct. Like if you were to look at the greater universal right or wrong concepts, right? What would be the fairest, just, most right and correct course of action for all in this situation? That is what that question is trying to answer. We are human. We will probably not answer this with perfection, but we should strive to find the closest point. And that is what I try to do with that question. Next, is action, compensation, or punishment sound and reasonable? Now, first off, are they even needed? Are they even required in any shape, form, or fashion? Right? And if they are they fair and reasonable and sound? Okay, straight up. Like if my God out there ever came in here and said, "Hey, Dad, look, um, I just got rear end," right? Yeah, my first reaction is, "Who the hell hit you?" However, at the same time, I want to pull myself away from the fact that I'm her godfather and I want to look at the concept and I want to see what actually happened. Did that person actually hit her? Did he rear end her because she was at fault doing something else? I'd be looking through all that stuff. And if it all came out nice and balanced, should compensation, should one or the other pay for the damages, or were they both at fault? Should the damages be split equally? How, those kinds of things. Or did they get dinged and technically the guy don't want any money? There's no real damage to his vehicle, and technically she screwed up, so I don't really feel the need to make him pay for her vehicle. That'd be stupid in my personal opinion. A lot of people don't share that opinion, but so be it. So, no punishment, no represent, nothing. What are those situations? There's so many different things that can come into those. It is complex. Those are the questions I ask. They seem simple, but when you start looking at them, they do get complex. Next, how does it measure what is right and what is rightful? Okay. What is rightful? What is right? What is the correct course of action here? How would you look at that? What do you view as right? Like in let's say a bar fight or something, who started it, right? Does the person who got jumped, even though they took part in the fight, should they face punishment in some way for the fight? And some of that does again depend on the circumstances overall at hand, so what is right? And most of the time in cases like that, if the person's jumped, I would say they're justified and it would be right to see to it they aren't punished for the actions of another. They simply defended themselves. There are exceptions to that. But you see what I'm saying? Does it measure how does it measure what is actually right and rightful? That's why it's in there separately for me anyway. And is there any real validity to the situation? This one's important. This one's very important. Did it actually happen the way you heard it? I have seen so many people, more often than not, probably 80% in my life, get their panties in a twist over something that never actually happened. And if it did happen, it didn't happen even remotely close to the way it was stated. And when you actually get the facts, the undeniable facts, it's a completely, entirely different situation than what you were told. It is ill wise to consider the word of mouth fact. It really is. That's one thing I have learned in life. I do not just take what I'm told as gospel ever. That's why I'm very data and fact driven. All right. Now, like I said, when we say just is about being right or correct, we are not talking about trivial knowledge, but rather being right in one's actions. Is what you're doing, the action you're taking, what you are doing, is it right? Okay. Now, if you truly believe the actions you take or what you believe is right, and you hold that conviction in its absolution, I applaud you. That's hard. That is very hard to do for a lot of people. A lot of people are sheep. They follow the crowd. What is right never comes into their equation. And we're going to get into this a little deeper. So, yes, let's get into that. Yes, this can mean that in order to do what is right, by your standards and not what is right by, let's say, the legal standards, that you might have to take action that actually goes against legal standards, right? Technically, we know punching somebody is wrong. However, if I saw somebody jump someone on the street, lady, child, whatever, I can assure you I'm going to hit that person. I can guarantee you I'm punching them. And if there's a crowbar nearby, I'll probably hit them with that. It sounds awful. It sounds horrible, but I will defend someone who is being attacked and defenseless. And yes, if I go to court and the judge asks, "Did you hit this guy?" Absolutely, judge. And I'm going to tell him why. But understand this. This is important. I also accept the full weight of the consequences of my actions when I do it. When I say I believe this course of action is right, you can't punish me to not follow it. I will still do it, and I will still happily accept the punishment. See what I'm saying? So you have to understand that. However, in the path, one must also be willing to accept all legal. See, here's my notes. You must be willing to accept all legal punishment for actions they take. This is one of the things that separates true belief from a thing of just ideology. It's easy to say you think something's awful. It's easy to say you think someone should have stepped in and helped a person, or someone should have done this or that. And if you truly believe it, if it's truly part of who you are, you're not just going to say it, you would walk the walk without hesitation. Okay, that's one of those things. And I'm not, if you can't do it, that's not judgment against you either, because this day and age, it gets rough in life. It really does, right? It gets absolutely rough when we're talking about right, wrong, and justice and those things, right? A mage, or any person for that matter, needs to meditate on what is truly right or wrong and develop his or her own code of honor with justice as a guiding principle. Okay, you need to understand to you what is right or wrong, right? You need to understand that, especially this day, like throughout history, in all honesty, throughout history, you have had legal systems that the people did not agree with. What was legal and what was right may not necessarily be the same. Throughout history, we have had problems with that. Okay. So that is something you have to decide. And then you have to decide which path you will take. Will you take the path that keeps you out of jail, or will you take the path of right to do what is right, if they are separate paths at some point, right? Um, just because a group of people say it is right or pass a law does not automatically make it just. Okay, it does not. Just because there's a law does not mean it's just. Of course, knowing your own code and what you find truly just does nothing to exempt you from the laws of the country in which you choose to live, or in the state in which you live. And here in America, the US has its laws, each state has its own sets of laws, so you need to be aware of those. You still are fully responsible for all consequences of any action you take, right? This is where the discussion gets a little deep there. And you can see why trying to avoid the politics here because of a lot of reasons. Um, so if you think the course is correct, you have to own that course and the responsibility of it, plain and simple. I can say here in America, we got a lot of foolishness going on, a lot of foolish people who think actions don't have consequences. And what is it the kids call it now? FAFO, uh, F around and find out. Um, and I think a lot of that foolishness would die down if consequences of actions came back into the world. I really do. And I don't even think that's political. I think that's every aspect of life, right? When I was a little kid, if I hauled off and whacked my brother with a toy, ain't nothing political about whacking my brother with a toy. I got an ass whooping. I deserved it. I'm thankful for it. I am thankful for practically every butt whooping I ever got. Same thing about my brother. He'd screw around, he'd get in trouble. Not to say that consequences were always intelligent, wise, and well thought out. There's plenty of things I did where there was consequences of my actions, and there was nothing along that line of thought that was wise. The closest thing to wisdom I ever got out of those, not to do it again. That is a possibility. So yeah, you have to understand that you do have to strike a balance between what is right, and understanding that you are still under the laws of the land, right? You need to understand that. Now, does that mean you absolutely posit that you must sacrifice what is right for the laws of the land? Well, only you can answer that question. If doing what is right is worth risking jail, no. But you're still held accountable. Like, just because you walk to a judge and say, Judge, I did what I thought was morally right, I think my moral compass is higher than that of the laws of the land. Groovy. Congratulations. We're proud of you. You're still going to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Right? The religious right does not help you in court of law, nor does moral. Right? You might find a situation or a judge where you explain what you were doing, why you took an action, and that may be taken into account. It may not. So when you do it, you assume it's not. Okay? Hope that helps them. Because justice is not about the laws specifically. Okay? It's about right and wrong in a greater sense. And this is something we each must meditate on. That's why this is very much not political. And as a mage, as a practitioner, you have the ability to use magic to make great alterations to your life. And even when you get into curses, hexes, and baneful magic, you have the ability inside magic to alter things in life altering ways that are irreversible, right? You need to know where you stand and how you think on those matters. You really do. Lao Tzu actually said highly evolved people have their own conscience as pure law. That was something he said and taught. Now, this did not mean they are not subject, again, to the laws of the land. That's not what it meant. It just meant that these individuals, their conscience would be the compass to which they live their life by, and would have the final word in any decision they made, for better or worse, right? And I will give a concept of where people find a contradiction in my logic, and I will also explain why it's not a contradiction. Once we get through this, I do promise that. So stay with me to the end. Stay with me to the end here. And again, understand, I am not saying in any shape, form, or fashion that you should foolishly ignore the law of the land, whatever that may be, wherever you are. Only that times may come where you find you are required to disregard the law for reasons of higher justice and be willing to bear the full weight of those consequences for your actions when you do it. You'll notice this whole time, anytime that pops up where to do what's right, you must go against the grain over here or the standard law. I keep reminding you, full weight of consequences. At no point in my life have I ever thought you get to hand wave your consequences away because you thought you were doing what was right. Doesn't matter. Actions have consequences. You still get them. So, at least from a guy like me, you're not going to get sympathy or pity and like, well, you don't deserve the consequence. You know, you do. Like, If you truly believe in the path and you truly think what you did was right, that can happen. That can happen. It sucks. It sucks that that's a situation we are in as humans, but even in the wilds, in nature, animals see similar things for different reasons. That is all I'm saying. You have to bear those consequences. And I'm not saying not follow the law. Again, I do obey laws. I absolutely do. Um, I'm going to probably butcher this name. It's a name I've butchered and gotten right different times. Balthazar Gracian wrote, "A just man, he stands on the side of the right with such conviction that neither the passion of a mob nor the violence of a despot can make him overstep the bounds of reason." Okay? So if you are doing right and there is well thought reason for why this is the right action, peer pressure, a mob, a violent threats, those are not going to change you. You're going to hold the course. That's what he's saying here. And if you look at the way people act, they want to shout people down, they want to use peer pressure, they want to use threats to get someone to change their opinion and what they believe is right or wrong in their life. If you truly believe it, they're not going to be able to change your opinion. Right? Now, with all that said, let me be clear, in case you haven't gotten that from everything I've said. There is a difference between lawful and being just. You can be lawful without being just, and you can be just without being lawful. Those two things are not the same. Okay? Now, if we look at it in role-playing terms, or video games, usually D&D is the one a lot of people talk about. They have an alignment system in there, right? There's lawful good and there's lawful evil. Lawful means you stick to the letter of the law. What does the law say, right? Lawful neutral, they're neither good, they're neither evil. They just follow the letter of the law. Technically speaking, the justice system is supposed to be just that, lawful neutral. Justice is blind. It looks at the laws, it looks at the statutes, it looks at what was said. That is it, straight up. Now, lawful evil can follow the letter of the law and cause it to do great harm. Lawful good can follow the letter of the law and use it to do good, right? But both of those, like it or not, they still have an agenda. One's trying to do good, one's trying to do evil. The law itself, the law by its very nature is neutral and it doesn't give a damn. So, lawful neutral is the truest concept of law in and of itself. Just like you can have chaotic good. Chaotic means you don't give a crap about the law in any shape, form, or fashion. You're going to do what's right and good regardless. And that's okay, because chaotic is the opposite of lawful in that equation. So you would do what's right regardless of laws. You also have chaotic evil. Again, that's pretty much, think Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. He gave no craps about anyone else. He just did what he wanted to kill everybody. You know what I mean? Castor Troy from Face Off, just absolute, because I would actually say Palpatine would be a good example. Lawful evil, at least early before he went full Sithy, because he did use the laws. That would be a good example of that. So remember, lawful is not just, right? All right. Now, this is a tricky one, but I do recommend you sit down and meditate on it. What is just? What is just to you? And this is something, I'll be honest, you're going to be meditating on this your whole life because you're going to be presented with things. So you're going to meditate on it and you may find a just course of action. In all ways, it's a just course of action. I have found myself in such situations where I've meditated on something and I found a just course of action. I stood fast in it. And even to this day, I don't regret the path I walked, the path I took in that. However, the situation of the world today is not the situation of the world to which I took that path. And I would not take the same path today because in today's world, the outcome would not be just now. It was just then. Now it wouldn't be just. The same path is not just now. I do not regret taking the just path, but I would not take it today because it would no longer be a just path. Okay. So those things can happen. And if they do happen to you, don't regret the path you walked. Just seek to continue to do the best you can to walk it today. Okay. And only you can decide what is right or wrong for you in this context, what is just for you. Note, however, that as we meditate on this, what is just by our standards, we cannot forcefully place upon another person. Okay, that's another fallacy we run into today in the world. We try to make everyone else view the world as we view it. We try to make everyone else live up to our standards. I'll be honest with you. I don't have a single friend who lives up to my standards. And I have a lot of dearly, dearly close friends that I would give my life for. But it would be a fallacy for me to try and force them to live up to my standards. The irony is, all of them do have their own high standards, and I don't live up to their standards either. We have different sets of standards. That's okay. Just like you shouldn't try to shove your religion on a person or your sexuality on a person, or you should not try to show your general way of life, your opinions, how you view the standards you hold yourself up to. You should not try to shove those onto another person and demand that they cater to you. The world's not meant to cater to you. It isn't. Sorry. It sucks, but it isn't. Right? The world's not out there to cater to Drake. It's not out there to cater to anyone. The world's going to just kick you in the ass when you turn your back, if anything. But that's actually not a bad thing. In fact, it's far easier to empower yourself, to master yourself, to adapt to those situations, to learn to meditate, to learn to see those things using the very things we've been talking about in this series. So that whatever the world, society throws at you, you can handle it instead of suddenly having to try and force everyone else to do whatever it is you think because that would make you happier. Okay. This is a tricky one. So I would challenge everyone watching this on YouTube or Rumble, sit down, think about things that's come up, and look at the topic of your day, whatever that may be. Meditate on it. Ask yourself where you stand on it. And don't come to an emotional decision. Follow it logically, follow it through. Have actual thoughts on it. If you come to me and say, hey, Drake, I think we should raise the driver's license age to 35. Okay. Why? It would be a just cause. Why is it a just cause? You should be able to articulate and give me all your reasons well thought out. Okay. If you're just screaming at me and yelling and using emotions, I've already written you off as someone who doesn't matter. I absolutely have. If the only thing you have to drive something as a just cause is your emotions, I and most of the world will write you off instantly. Meditate on it, think it through, find those points. Now, what happens if you have your list of points and you meet somebody and they counterpoint? Well, good. That's good. Take what they say seriously. Anytime someone counterpoints me, I take that to heart, right? Especially when it comes to things that are just. And I meditate on it. I consider what they said. I put it against what I'm thinking. And I try, I see how they reason out. Your opinion can change. Opinions are allowed to change. That's okay. That's cool, right? That's okay. Don't be afraid to change your opinion. Okay. And now, like I said, I promised everybody I would I would give an example of something. You all know I do like justice. I do try to follow laws. I'm pretty big on it. Okay. Now, one of the questions that I got hit with, and I get hit with all the time growing up, how did I rationalize the fact that I come from the Appalachian Hills? I had many friends who ran moonshine. Moonshine's lawfully illegal. Yes, it is. It is absolutely lawfully illegal. Have I ever ran it? No, I have not, because it's illegal. How did I rationalize them doing this thing that is illegal? Why didn't I run to the coppers? Why didn't I do this? Simple. I understand it is illegal. Okay, I understand that. I don't necessarily agree with the legislation that it is illegal. I don't necessarily agree with that. And most of these people do it to keep a tradition, something that is very core value to their people, to their area alive. It's a part of their family. And it's something their families have done for years and years and years and years just to put food on the table, just to feed their families, right? And I can see many, 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 many laws out there that are taking food off the table. While I can see many laws that are keeping food off the table like that one, right? There's certain laws in certain areas. Now, just because I can understand it, just because I can see it's a piss poor law, in my opinion, does that mean I have the legal right to go run shine? No, it does not. I do not. I do not have that right in any shape, form, or fashion. So I'm not going to run shine. Easy peasy. But it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to go, hey, that person's doing it. They wish to carry the risk. Fine. That's fine. And everyone I know, if they got caught, they would do the time. They understand the risks, they understand what they're doing. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to point the finger at them either. I won't defend them either. Don't get me wrong. They all know if they ever find themselves with a shiny new pair of police bracelets, I ain't going to defend them. I'll visit them, but I ain't going to defend them. And I'll be there when they get out. You know, those kinds of things. That is what I mean. You can actually rationalize those, and you can find a balance there. Just because I do follow the law, I do think the law is important, doesn't mean that I think that every single law in the books is sacred and must not be questioned in any way. That in and of itself is a fallacy. Now, if I was an extremely lawful to almost like a religious state person, that might be the case. But most people tend to review me as chaotic good, even though I tend to follow the laws. I think most laws do serve a decent purpose, hopefully. I do understand most of those laws are written by politicians with agendas too. So, take that for what it's worth. That's why I do put so much relevance onto meditating on justice, meditating on right and wrong, meditating on what is right for me. Where do I stand? But not just understanding where I stand, why I stand there. Remember that. That is a key point here is why do you stand there? And I continue to meditate on this every week of my life. And honestly, I meditate on it. These days, I've been doing it for the last 4 years, no, 6 years, daily. I've been meditating on right, wrong, and justice for 6 years daily. The world's changing, everything's shifting, and you got to make those decisions for yourself. You absolutely do. And you need to be able to articulate your stance, your decision, your belief. A good mage, a good practitioner is going to be able to genuinely articulate why they stand where they stand. If you don't, if you are unable to articulate it, you got a lot more meditation to do on that. That is a sign you need to go deeper, because either you could be following someone else's ideals, right? That's like going into a profession just because your dad did it, your granddad did it, your great great granddaddy did it. You hate it, but they did it. No, no, no. You got to find what's right for you. All right. I hope this has made sense. This was one of the harder ones to present because this is easier to present if you can give political examples. But we're not doing politics here, folks. The closest we're going to get is the moonshine example. That's as close as we're getting. And I don't really think that's overly political in any way. If you're here and you like a good shot of corn liquor, thumbs up to you. Good stuff. If you've never had it, if you get an opportunity to try it, I won't go say seek it out because again, it's not legal. Well, there's some legal runs now. If you can find a good one. All right, everybody, you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you later. Until next time, I'm Drake. This has been Working Dragon Mystic. Take care. Bye-bye.